The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of the Expanse, Season 4, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this TV show. Joining me today on the panel are Steve Nelson. Hi, Steve.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to occupied Oklahoma.
And Father Michael Gossett. Hi, Father Michael.
How's it going, Dom?
Very good, thanks. So before we get started, I do want to remind folks, if you can, we really appreciate it if you could take a moment and go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from and write a review of the show. That always helps other people find the show and kind of boosts up our numbers. We haven't had reviews in a long time on this particular podcast, Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. So if you could write a review, we'd really appreciate it. And also share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this community of listeners and enjoying all these great TV shows and movies and talking about them. We'd really love to have you share this with your friends. So it's been a while, guys. We got together 2 years ago to discuss The Expanse seasons 1 through 3. At the time, it was on the Sci-Fi Channel, and as far as we knew, that's where it was going. And then it got canceled and moved over to Amazon after a huge fan reaction, which was, somewhat gratifying to see, although that seems to be happening more and more, fans saving shows and getting them over to streaming services and whatnot. But one of the things I wanted to ask is, do you feel like anything has changed about the show and its move from Sci-Fi to Amazon?
It seems like it kept the feel a lot of how it has been going. I think obviously they swear probably a lot more than they did on the Sci-Fi Channel. But, to me, it still has the spirit of the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how I like these shows where they dump all of the episodes at once.
Right.
I don't know. I always sort of like the anticipation of waiting for the next, next week's show. But, there's a lot of people that will sit down and binge watch an entire season, in a day.
Right.
So I guess there's just different audiences. But I kind of miss the anticipation.
It's like people who eat all their Halloween candy on Halloween night, and then the one kid, like my daughter, who will sock it away and still be eating Halloween candy the next summer. She likes to savor her food. But yeah, I mean, I like CBS All Access puts out each episode of, Star Trek Picard or Discovery or Disney Plus, The Mandalorian, once a week. It makes it an event. It builds it up, and I can see the appeal of that. I enjoy it that way for my family. It becomes like The Mandalorian became let's get together on Friday and watch the new episode together, which was like in the old days, right? Before we had the binge drops.
Yeah, that's how I grew up with, before even VCRs. You had to catch it when it was live or you missed it, and you could never watch it again.
Yeah, I remember that when I was a kid. The whole family sat around on Thursday night, NBC, watching The Cosby Show or, or something like that. Yeah, I mean, it was appointment TV. I mean, it's nice that you can, when it streams, when it drops as a stream, you can watch it at your own pace. So there's that, but you're right. I there is that difference. It feels different. It feels more like one long show as opposed to discrete episodes.
Even in more recent times, just that having the space to discuss it in between.
Yeah.
With shows like Lost, I would think about, you'd watch it and think through it for a week and then come back to it again. And there is something great about that. Yeah.
And you could be rest assured that if you want to talk about it with your friends, they haven't seen the next episode yet. Right now with this stuff, you got to be careful. How much have you seen? Where have you got to yet? Can we talk about it? And then you're like, oh, well, we can't talk about it. It's like, I got to wait for you to catch up. Yeah, so, yeah, there is that difference. One of the things I wanted to talk about is sort of in a general sense before we get into the season itself. How do you feel about the actor who plays James Holden, Stephen Strait? When I read the books, because I read most of the books before the series came out, Holden was much older in the books, in my vision of him and the way he was written. At least to me, it seemed like Stephen Strait, the actor, seems a bit young to play him with the gravitas they want him to have as a character. Do you agree with that, or do you think he does just fine? What do you think?
I think him being younger, at least, especially in the early seasons, he was such a idealist. He's like, I'll just tell the truth and that'll fix everything. And maybe having a younger guy kind of plays to that he's sort of inexperienced in the world. And I guess I like the dynamic between him and Miller, where Miller is a little older than he is, and that's sort of a nice thing, especially in this season as it ended. But I could see having that different picture from before seeing the TV show.
Right.
In the first 3 seasons, I found myself, I can't remember some specific instances, but it seems that his reaction was a little bit more reserved than I would have thought, given the emotion of the moment. And I was like, oh, really? That's the way you're going to play that?
Yeah, right. Mm. You know, one of the things I really like about the character is that he's a strong moral code, and he doesn't waver. Like he's not easily pushed off of that strong sense of morality that he has. And I feel like he's sort of the North Pole of this. That's one of the things I love about the Expanse series is he has this North Pole sense of direction for his morality, where others see that and they want to follow him because of that. I like that idea that we have a story with that kind of character. You don't get a lot of those these days. You get a lot of anti-heroes and guys who are kind of, they're self-interested or that sort of thing.
That's what I always thought about the character Amos, is that he had a code, but you never quite knew what it was. And he was going to react in his own way, but it wasn't predictable.
Right. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't exactly call it a Christian morality, but he certainly had a sense of things he would do and things he wouldn't do. And people that he would protect and people he wouldn't, he would attack or whatever, which is I've seen like in other series, like in Firefly, like Mal was sort of like that in Firefly, where he had a very strong code that may not have lined up with Christian morality per se, but it may be not as unpredictable as Amos is, but it's certainly there. That's interesting. Yeah. Amos certainly has a code. Holden has a code, and it's interesting the differences between them. Let's get into the talking about the season. I'm going to give you a quick rundown, a little synopsis of the season. So the gates have opened. The rings are opened. There's a land rush to all these new planets that they've discovered. Over 1,000, I recall, 1,200, I think. And it brings Belter prospectors, Earth-based corporations. They come into a conflict on this planet called Ilis because the Earth Corporation has been given mining rights there. The Belters are refugees from the war in the moon of Ganymede. So the UN president, Christian Avasarala, one of my favorite characters, frankly, I think she's fantastic, both in the books and in the show, sends Holden and the Rocinante crew to mediate a solution. But the conflict ends up taking second fiddle to the mystery of the alien technology on the planet and the ghost of Detective Miller, which, again, another great character. Meanwhile, Christian's fighting for political survival as UN president, and a new crisis with Mars begins to ramp up. And the Belters, who've been trying to get more respect as an equal power, are dealing with rogue factions within themselves that have been going pirate and seem to have an unexpected source of firepower propping them up. Meanwhile, former Mars Marine Bobby, again, another great character, is trying to deal with her infamy on Mars for having helped Earth, as she's now retired, and she now has this blue-collar job dismantling ships, but she gets roped into a black market ring that seems to be connected to something bigger than just selling demobilized war material. So I think that's about summarizes the season there, or at least how the season begins. So let's talk a little bit about there's a bunch of different threads going through here. There's a Bobby thread, a Christian thread, a Holden thread, and a Belter thread, or a plot line. Let's talk about Bobby first. So Bobby is working on Mars. She's got her family there. And what I find interesting is that Mars is the more technologically advanced country, let's just call it, or nation state that over Earth. Earth is bigger, more populous, but Mars has better technology, which I think is an interesting switch. You don't often see that in science fiction. It's usually Earth still maintains its position, probably because of the terraforming. So her nephew gets involved in a criminal enterprise. He gets swept up in these drug dealers, I guess they are, and being this gang that's being led by this crooked cop. And she has to agree to work with them to steal military equipment so that her brother gets out of it. So let's talk a little bit about this cop, the detective Martin. At first, he's just a dirty cop and you don't like him, right? I mean, is that a general agreement?
Yeah, totally.
Now, did your estimation of that change? Did your feelings toward him, your attitude toward him change over the season at all? Did he become more sympathetic to you? There's a key moment that they really humanize him, I think.
I think that, yeah, when Bobby meets his family, that's shakes things up quite a bit. That she assumed he didn't have a family.
Right.
And was utterly surprised. But I think as they work together, like there's a respect grows between them. And that, for whatever reason, helps you to, I don't know, feel a little more sympathetic towards that whole crew. And even, I think the speech that he gives about just that, like, Mars is dying because of all those new planets.
Right.
They'll never finish terraforming Mars now. They're going to lose that spark of work that they had going that probably made them the more advanced nation. But I think just that, like, he sees the way things are going and wants to have a way out for his family. And that really, that gives a lot of character to what was, like you said, just a dirty cop, like a drug dealer is what you kind of thought he was.
Yeah. He wasn't just some flat, corrupt cop figure. They really fleshed him out some. And you actually bring up a really good point about, like, the motivation with Mars is, so Mars, they've been, generations, and it would take generations more to terraform it, make it Earth-like so you could walk around on the surface without spacesuits. And the discovery of 1,000 Earth-like planets just cut the legs out from under that. Like, why bother doing this anymore? It's very interesting.
Yeah, you have to wonder what their future motivation is going to be. It's such a difficult place to live, even though it is closer to Earth.
Yep.
But at the same time, why work so hard and endanger so many people if you've got plenty of expansion?
Right. So there's a very interesting thread throughout the season. So, and there are certain questions get raised. Who's buying all this stuff that they're stealing? They're stealing it and selling it. We find out eventually that some of it's going to those Belter pirates, I think. But and why are renegade Belters working with the Martians when they hate the inners, they call them? So it's kind of interesting. Well, in any case, by the end of the season, there's not a lot of time spent with Bobby. I mean, there is some action moments and some good stuff there, but not a lot of development with her. Except by the end of the season, somebody ambushes the gang she's working with and kills them all. And Bobby survives, and she agrees to work with Christian Avasarala at the end of the season, which is the one thing she wouldn't do at the beginning of the season because Christian is the one who put her in this difficult position of having betrayed her people. So kind of interesting there.
Yeah, I still couldn't get over missing her marine armor that she. I mean, that was such a part of her character. I miss her having that now.
Yes. I hope she gets it back because Bobby as a Marine, I just love that Marine recon. Some of those action scenes are just really cool. They were really good in season 3, especially.
I ended up enjoying her story, but I think I kind of missed her being with the other characters.
Yeah,
like she, especially at the beginning, maybe just because it was a little slower and it was sort of filling out what was going on. But I really enjoyed it by the end. But I look forward to her in the next season being with Christian and hopefully even some of the other Rocinante people.
Yeah. Bobby's another one who has that strong moral center. It's like she has a code that she won't betray, a sense of honor. And I appreciate that. That's one of the things I really like about the character. Now let's move to talking about the next major character, Christian Avasarala, we were just talking about. So she's now moved from behind. She used to be the power behind the throne, behind running things behind with the UN president, but now she is UN president, and they're dealing with this big problem of this exodus. Everyone wants to go and settle on these 1,200 worlds that are now discovered, and you got refugees trying to get out there running through the gates, and meanwhile the development rights to these worlds are being sold to corporations. And the season begins with a bunch of belter ships trying to get through the gates, and some of them getting pretty heavily damaged and I think destroyed even. But one gets through and gets to this planet Ilis, and like I said, she sends the Rocinante to find out, to negotiate a settlement. But also, I think she sends them to find any potential protomolecule exposure problems, because they still don't know what's out there. But she's cautious about expansion. There are people within her administration who are really pro-expansion, but she's cautious. Now, do you remember why that was? Was it because of Holden's warning from the end of season 3? Do you remember that?
Yeah, that is good, because she was really dead set on that in this season.
Yeah.
Maybe just... I kind of chalked it up to seeing like how bad things went with Eros and the proto-molecule coming to destroy Earth, and I think she's just really shocked by the power of this alien thing.
Right, because the reason I asked that question was at the end of season 3, we saw that Holden has this vision on the ring space station of. Basically, what he saw was, so whoever the makers of the protomolecule are, as powerful as they are, some even more powerful beings destroyed them. And so he's afraid that if they poke around too much out in the galaxy, whatever that was is going to notice them and do the same to them. So there's I think that's Holden's fear. But yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that's so much Christian's fear yet at this point. So basically, her plot thread is her political troubles. She's got to run for re-election. She has this this cabinet secretary who's pro-expansion who resigns, Nancy Gao, and she runs against Christian. And Christian is trying to win at whatever cost, because she is a bit of an amoral character. She doesn't have a strong moral compass in that sense. But she starts playing dirty tricks. She wants to reveal some embarrassing nepotism info about her opponent. She used connections to get ahead, and that revealed something very interesting about the Earth of the future. Do you guys remember that that everyone in the future on Earth has a universal basic income? You hear people talk about that today. But it's only just barely enough to kind of live on. It's very basic. If you want to get anywhere, to rise above that, there's fierce competition for limited educational and vocational slots. And it turns out her opponent jumped to the head of the line because of who she knew. What did you think of that? The way the Earth is sort of organized in that future, and what that says about where we stand today. Because there are people who think that's what we should be doing, is universal basic income. Everyone gets an amount of money from the government. In a future where resources are essentially unlimited due to technology, why would we have to work? Is what some people say. What do you think of that? Does that undermine some basic truth about what it means to be human, to not have to work? What do you think? I'm leading you here.
Star Trek kind of had the same idea. There was no money in the future.
Right.
And it always just didn't ring true to me. Maybe just because I'm a person of my own era, Yeah. I find it hard to see how human society can get from where we are now to get to that. And the same thing happens here. I was like, I don't know. I'd have to see what that arc of how you get there to be able to understand it and accept it.
And we don't see too many examples of people in the show that are just on that basic income. I think there's just the one episode I remember is when Bobby is on Earth and she sneaks out and kind of wanders through the poorer parts of the city, you see like, oh, this is really rough. But the Earth people we spend time with are the most powerful people in the world, and so we don't always get, we hear about, it's hard to get a job. You have to wait. You might be like 1 in 1,000 to be able to do something like this, but we don't get too many views of that. And I think it's just interesting that they keep bringing up that it's not like a perfect solution. It's not this utopian like Star Trek sort of future, but it's but we don't get a ton of views at it. Just, but it's also, you brought up that it's kind of the same on Mars in this season, and sort of even the belt, just that like everybody's options are really limited unless you kind of find yourself in the right position.
In a way, it historically harkens back to the days of just before the great expansion from Europe and the colonization outward, the late 15th century, the early 16th century, the age of exploration and colonization. Options were limited in many cases for a lot of people, but yet the Renaissance was giving us a new idea of what we could be. And so in a way, it was almost inevitable that Europe would be where the colonization would explode from. It didn't explode from Africa. It didn't explode from Asia. It came from Europe because of that the flowering, the intellectual flowering, the social and cultural flowering. And yet the options, the economic options for one, but other options societal options were limited. And so people naturally looked at the horizon at these utopian lands, and that was where prosperity was, where options were, so I thought it was a very interesting analogy to that here, where their options are limited. They live in what could be considered a flowering of humanity, but yet their options generally are limited. And now there's this new thing that shows them what they could have. So I thought that was an interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, Holden makes a comment in the last episode about humanity becoming a galaxy-spanning civilization.
Right.
Which caught, I forget who he was talking to, but it caught him by surprise.
Yes. And that's one of the things he worries about is if we become this galaxy-spanning civilization, will the same thing happen to us that happened to the proto-molecule engineers? I thought that was very interesting. One of the things that comes up next is Christian's dirty tricks here with her opponent sort of backfires on her, because they have this political debate, and the opponent sort of embraces the nepotism, and she says, "Yeah, I did this because the system is broken. Everyone is dissatisfied with the system, and we all try to do what we can to get ahead. And so, we've got to break the system, and the going out and expanding and colonizing these worlds is the way we can do that." I thought that was a very clever way of the writers sort of undermining our viewpoint character at this point, Christian, our hero in a sense, undermining her position, but in a way that we know, like, that's probably not going to work out well for them. Like this expansion thing it's dangerous. But I thought it was really interesting how she kind of turned it on its head. They didn't take the easy road in the writing of that, is what I mean. I think so. Really kind of interesting.
There were several instances in that debate where Christian sort of got painted into a corner and having to truthfully respond in a way that made her look either overzealous or tyrannical or something.
Yeah, it was fascinating to see her being like, she's supposed to be this great political operator, but she's not doing so well right now, as the one in the chair. That's very interesting.
I like the change that, because she, like you said, she was the power behind the throne and could exercise that sort of, as you said, like overzealously, ruthlessly, and she did, and she kind of like did what she thought she needed to get things done. But once she's in that place where she has to play politics in a whole new level, and I like that they make her opponent like, she's not evil. She has good reasons for thinking the things she does, and has, it seems like, good intentions for thinking the total opposite thing that Christian does.
Yeah, it's what's the old saying? Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. Like now that she's got to be the one, in charge, it's not quite the same. Like you can't do the same sorts of dirty tricks and underhanded dealing that you did when you were the person in the shadows. And yeah, you're right. And her opponent, she seems to have clean hands. She's not necessarily a bad person. So the debate ends early, though. The debate is interrupted because there's a security threat. Is an incoming ship headed for a collision, I think, with the asteroid defense platform around Earth. So like they figured out how to blast asteroids that are coming at the planet. Avasarala, she orders it shot down, but it turns out that it supposedly had civilians and children on board. It was this ship that was believed to have been taken by Belter pirates. It was a UN ship, and then they'd been told it had been destroyed, and now it suddenly shows up again, and they have to shoot it before it crashes into the thing. And turns out, and it's a bit of a scandal, another scandal for Christian. I mean, the Belter ships at the rings, now this, and then another one where she has UN Marines board another Belter ship where she's looking for this Belter pirate we'll be talking about in a minute. Turns out he's not there, but the ship was rigged to explode, and there were civilians on it, and she's blamed again. And so she's getting painted into this corner by she does the thing that seems like the hard decision for the person in charge to do, but every time it seems like it's the wrong decision, and she's really painted into a corner. Is she doing the right thing? Did she have other choices? What could she have done differently? What do you guys think of her role here as the UN president in this position? I recognized earlier that it's been a long time since most of us have watched the season. Came out a while ago. It took us a while to schedule this, but if you recall, do you have any sense of what you think? Did she get outmaneuvered by a better political opponent, whoever this shadowy figure is running things is? What do you think?
I feel like she's been in such a mode of not just being the president, but like saving the galaxy, has kind of been her role throughout the show, that she definitely, I mean, she wants to do what's right is for Earth and protect the Earth. But we've seen again and again that she's willing to work with her enemies. She's even willing to compromise sometimes for the greater good. And she does that again and again. And I think when she has to sort of like own up to that, it doesn't look that great all the time. And so and I think just like we talked about, the enthusiasm for this possibility of we could go make something, get out of being stuck in the same spot on Earth. That's tough to beat, I think. And her opponent is very much that sort of model.
I remember thinking in that moment when she was trying to decide whether or not to shoot down or destroy that ship, that we had the benefit of more knowledge than she did about what was going on.
Yeah.
And so in the moment, did she make the logical decision? And I kind of think she did in that particular instance. Because I was reminded of 9/11 and how the military was given authority to shoot down rogue airliners.
Yep.
And they didn't have to, thank God. But what would have happened if they'd gotten into that position, and then who would have been blamed and that kind of thing. So that was kind of what went through my mind when I watched that particular thing. But, we had the benefit of seeing a bigger picture, and, that she did.
That's the unenviable position of a president, that they're the one that has to make the tough decisions based sometimes on a gut feeling, on the best information at the moment, and everyone will second guess them afterward and will critique every bad aspect of it, because there's always something bad aspect of every decision. So
I wanted to mention that I really appreciated the character of her husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in those instances where they were alone and she was kind of using him as a bellwether kind of thing, and he would let her have it. He would very honest with her And I just really appreciated those moments because it gave you a chance to see kind of what was going on in her head without her having to actually say it. Does that make sense?
Yes, he was a lot her conscience in many aspects. He was the that good part of her that she hides deep. I really liked his character because he gives her an outlet. She's such a strong personality that he could stand up to her without being like her. I'm thinking of like House of Cards, where it was the opposite, where Frank and Claire were so much alike, and that made it bad for both of them. They kind of fed each other, if you remember House of Cards. But whereas in this, he was her better angel. You know, he kept pulling her back from the dark edge, of what she was capable of, I think. So very interesting to see that. That role that he played. I really did like that character. I agree.
And I think especially seeing his disappointment sometimes, that he that sometimes even she sort of was just projecting a false front to him, and when he realizes that, seeing like that he really expected more of her. Right.
It was a bigger, I don't say betrayal, but yeah, a bigger act on her part to deceive him or put a false front up for him. Well, in the end, as the season ends, we find out she loses the election, which is a big deal. We'll see what effects that has in future seasons, especially depending on how closely they adhere to the books and what we saw at the very end of the season, which again we'll be talking about in a little bit. What's coming, literally, for the future of Earth. But let's talk about our main viewpoint characters here. I want to talk about the Rocinante and I want to say William Holden. That's a completely different guy. That's great actor, but not James Holden is who I want to say. So we have this planet Ilis. We have the Belter refugees who have settled on it first. They kind of got there ahead of the Earth Corporation, and so this Earth corporate shuttle is landing on Ilis, and it crashes. And at first, we're not sure what, and then it becomes clear it was shot down. It was sabotaged. And so when the Rocinante arrives, there's open hostility between the survivors of that shuttle crash and the Belters. And so there's this very strong hostility. Now, I want to mention the character of Murtry. He's played by the great British actor Bern Gorman, who, if you've ever seen the Revolutionary War TV show Turn, who plays a British officer in that, I mean, he's just really great. He's always plays a bad guy. He's kind of stereotyped as typecast as a bad guy, but he's really great. And but I have to point. I want to a little anecdote. I have a little personal stake in this. When I was reading the books, I thought this character should be played by Clancy Brown, who a great sci-fi actor, has been in everything. He was in Highlander. You know, he's a great actor. And I even got into a conversation with the show's Twitter account. It's when I said Clancy Brown needs to be cast as this when you get to this in season 4. Like I did this like in season 2 or 3 or whenever that was. And they were like, "Hey, are you his agent?" I'm like, "No, but I'll take 5%." You know, I mean, it was. I was like, this character is so Clancy Brown. But I have to say, Bern Gorman does a good job. So I feel that it's okay. Sorry, Clancy Brown, but Bern Gorman does a good job.
He was great.
Yeah. So one of the things I really like about this was Naomi arriving on a planet for the first time. As a Belter, she's only lived in space. And because for generations they've lived, their bodies are not built to take full Earth gravity, so it's very difficult for them on Earth. I guess Ilis has lower than Earth gravity, but it's still more gravity than she's used to, and it has a physiological effect on the character, which plays a role through the season. But I love this moment when she walks out of the Roci for the first time under an open sky. And just imagine, what would that be like to have, like, you've always lived with a roof, and suddenly there's nothing between you and space. I just thought that was pretty awesome. That was a good scene. I really like that.
Almost a panic attack sort of experience. Just
yes,
everything's so big. Yeah.
and she gets the vertigo and falls to her hands and knees for a moment. Yeah. Really awesome. I enjoyed that. So they're in this village. They get attacked by this swarm of bugs that cuts everybody up. Like this big swarm comes in that interrupts their big argument. And it turns out they're technological. So it was interesting. Murtry, the corporate security guy, he's looking for the people who killed his people. He wants to bring justice on them. He's very aggressive, very violent. He kills one of the Belters he thinks was responsible. Meanwhile, the ghost of Detective Miller shows up again. And what I thought was interesting this season is how we suddenly see that Ghost Miller is not merely Miller, but it's sort of two things. It's split between his original personality and the one being controlled by the protomolecule, and they're fighting. I thought that was an interesting development. I don't remember that from the books, Father. Did you remember that?
Yeah, I think that it's really clear in the books that it's not Miller, and it just kind of projects itself as Miller. But I thought this was an interesting way to sort of twist it, especially as we got to the end of the story and saw him. We didn't see him for a very long time, and kind of try to understand why. Right.
So at this point, the Miller guides Hold into this alien structure where he's like, something is blocking the planet systems, and it's a root has grown through a panel. And I hate when that happens. And my computer won't start up. There's a root in it, but he cuts the root, and the panel reactivates, and suddenly the whole planet activates, and very dangerous stuff happens. There's lightning storms that strikes the whole planet. There's this massive burrowing thing that they have to shoot with a torpedo to stop it from hitting the village. And eventually this island on the other side of the planet explodes, like this massive super explosion, which causes a planet-wide tsunami that's going to hit the settlement. And there's all kinds of stuff going on in this, but I'm going through it quickly. And it causes the planet's defenses to shut down the orbiting ship's fusion reactors. That the protomolecule creators have the ability to control physics in a local area, so they shut down the reactors, which is bad for the ships in orbit. They're falling out of orbit. But Holden gets everyone to take shelter in the alien structure against the tidal wave. You have these two sides that are now jammed in together, fighting over resources. And then, as if that isn't enough, something on the planet is causing microorganisms to grow in everyone's eyes, causing them to go blind, except Holden. I love the title of this episode was called the One-Eyed Man.
Yeah.
Because it's from that phrase, in the land of the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Mm-hmm. Holden is the only one who can see, and he's literally trying to save everyone, hold them all together. Because I forgot to mention, in addition to being blind, there are these poisonous slugs that if you touch them, they kill you, that are everywhere. So, this character is literally running back and forth, doing what he's done the entire series, which is trying to save everyone from themselves because he can see what they can't. I just think that's a fascinating literalization of this figurative role throughout the series. Mm-hmm. What did you think of this part of this season? And we find out, by the way, why he's immune to this, but we'll get to that in a sec. But what did you think about his role so far in this season?
This to me was Holden at, like, there's so many other parts of this show where, like, why are you doing this? Why are you acting so impulsively? But I feel like he's really a leader in this one. He wants to take care of his people, but also stop violence and bloodshed. He wants everybody to be treated fairly. I probably liked him the most in this season out of the entire show, I think, just because he's kind of on his A game.
Right.
He's found his place in the galaxy as, like, kind of like this fixer or negotiator, whatever, just like deal with these alien weird situations and help people cope with it.
He's a real savior figure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I couldn't help quite absolve him of the fact that he kind of created this with Miller, reactivating whatever that stuff on the planet. I never did get a sense of what it was supposed to do or why it was there. Does that get explained later?
I don't think it ever really gets explained. I think even Miller didn't quite understand. I think I think my understanding is that Miller was acting under the impulse, under the control of the alien technology that's just wants to reactivate itself, start doing what it has always done, and it's prevented from. So it's just trying to repair itself. And I think that's why he gets Holden to do this. I think you're right. Holden follows the instructions of Miller because that's what he's always done, but there's no good reason to do it. Like he's like, well, I got to do it because Miller told me. Well, that's actually not necessarily a good reason here, but and I think he learns there that that's not a good reason.
The graphics of the tsunami though were pretty cool. Watching it consume the planet, and as it is approaching the
settlement there,
the artifact that they're hiding in, and all that. That was pretty cool. I really enjoyed watching that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and getting that the door shut, the barrier closed, like literally just in time. I mean, that was, of course, that always is on TV shows. It's always the very last second that they close the door or save the ship. That sort of thing.
To me, that was pure sci-fi.
Yes.
Get in at the last second. Oh, inside there are things that are going to kill you. You've now shut the door. You've closed yourself in with unknown alien.
That's right.
Yeah, that's pure sci-fi.
That is pure sci-fi. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now you're shut in here with the bad thing. That was something that was actually both of things. The blindness and the bugs was actually in the books, which I thought was interesting. But it wasn't a tsunami, if I recall. But it was a storm. It was like a really bad storm. I think that's what it was. It's a long time since I read the book, but it's a similar thing. And I do like the fact that Holden is this savior figure. He's the man who sees the evil around them and runs around saving everyone from themselves. And there's some who can't be saved because they just lose it. There's like a few people kind of go crazy and just kill themselves essentially. It was suicide by alien bug, but eventually, and he in himself is the source of their salvation, because it turns out the reason he's immune to the microorganism in the eyes is when he went on Eros with Miller back in season 1, he was irradiated to have cancer, and he's been on these anti-cancer meds ever since. And the anti-cancer meds have made him immune. And that's the secret to healing everybody else, which is so out of his own body. I feel like it's a very Christ metaphor here, the strong Christ metaphor in Holden. So I thought that was interesting.
It was a good storyline for the whole season with them. Yeah.
Yes. So meanwhile, in orbit, these ships are falling out of the sky. You have the Rocinante, you have... they have some great names for these ships. The Israel was the corporate ship, and which is interesting. And there's what was the other one? The
Barb. It's a long name.
Cola.
Barba Pizza Cola. I think I don't know. It sounded like something I ordered at an Italian restaurant. It was. I'll have an order of Barba Pizza Cola. So that's the Belter ship, and so they're all falling from orbit. But the Rocinante, of course, is in better shape. It's in a higher orbit, and they got better thrusters or something like that. Some technological reason. So they come up with this plan. Naomi, Alex, and this Belter woman named Lucia, which is great because that's my daughter's name. They devise a plan to save the Belter ship from falling out of orbit by tethering it with a cable and dragging it to a higher orbit, which I thought was fascinating. A nice bit of orbital mechanics, probably not completely accurate, but I like that the Expanse is the most scientifically accurate sci-fi show out there. I think, like a space sci-fi show. I really feel like that they really try to be as close to speculative science as they can. Like this is a logical how maybe science could develop in a few hundred years, and they extrapolated it out a bit. I really feel like they do that really well with this series. So they're going to pull it to higher orbit, but Mercury again tries to sabotage them. He shoots a weaponized shuttle from his ship at them to stop them. That doesn't work out for them, and they are able to save the ship. Meanwhile, and then this is the big resolution for this thread here is that Miller, now freed from the ghost of Miller, freed from the influence of the protomolecule, leads Holden deep into the planet. I love this whole part where they're like the planet is apparently just a giant construct, a giant alien machine. And he leads them like through this portal deep into the planet. He's taken to a piece of unexploded ordnance fired by the species that killed the protomolecules creators. And it's this weird sort of hole in space.
Eye of Sauron.
It's Eye of Sauron, right? that Miller and anything from the protomolecule people can't see, but Holden can. Mm-hmm. I thought that was fascinating. And what he wants to do is activate it to neutralize the protomolecule technology on the planet and save everyone. So shut everything down, essentially, which I think is fascinating. Meanwhile, Murtry and his second command, they're following. Amos is following them. And Amos, we talked about Amos's moral code earlier. Amos has been in a relationship with this woman, Murtry's second in command. And when she confronts him, he ends up killing her because she now poses a threat to him and or the people that he has tied himself to, which is Naomi and Holden. It was originally Naomi. Now Holden gets to, because Holden is with Naomi. So Holden's the captain. So Amos is now protects him. And he almost does it without a second thought. It's very, like we were talking about this earlier, Amos's moral code is very interesting. He turns on a dime in a sense, so I thought that was interesting.
I think we brought it up the last time we talked about this 2 years ago, but it's like once you're in his family, you're in his family, mm-hmm. And he'll do anything for them, like horrible things for them.
Right.
But yeah, once you're in that little group, and he told I can't remember her name, the second in command.
Yeah.
But he said, "I'll never lie to you," and then he said, "If you try to hurt Holden, you have to go through, or I will go through you." And that's exactly what he did. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. He never lies. Chandra mm-hmm. was her name. Yeah, he never lies. It's very interesting. He always tells the truth. So Miller ends up sacrificing himself to shut down the planet's defenses. I think that means he's gone. Maybe. Don't know. But that allows the fusion reactors in the spaceships to start up again, and everybody kind of settles things out. Murtry and Lucia are both supposed to be taken back to stand trial for their crimes, but Holden lets Lucia go by pretending she died in the midst of all this. Like, oh, I'll just tell everyone that you died. Which I thought was interesting, that because it turns out she was one of the conspirators who shot down that shuttle. She committed the crime, but Holden lets her go. His moral code says, no, you go, but Murtry not. And so I thought that was an interesting bit of moral decision making there on his part.
I think I like the reveal of her story, that she was part of that group. They were going to blow up the landing site, but when she realized the ship was coming early, she wanted to stop, and then tried to do it anyway, and ended up destroying the ship. I just thought that was it was a nice reveal that she was sort of a terrorist and was violently trying to protect their claim, but there was definitely some tension in there that wasn't revealed at first. That was good.
Didn't we saw that scene though, right, where she tried to disarm the explosion?
We did. Yeah, we did see that, and it's kind of a little bit of a cop out that they kind of pull her back. Where it's like, well, she wanted to blow up the landing pad, but she didn't want to hurt anybody. But she ended up hurting somebody, so she's not really all that responsible. In a way, I kind of wanted her to be like, no, I meant to. I knew people could get hurt, but I did it anyway. But I wish I hadn't, or something like that. It would have been I think it would have been a more interesting character moment there that they would have had. But it's fine. I like the family dynamics. Her husband, her daughter who wanted to leave to go to university in the solar system and that sort of thing, and how having to let go. So very interesting little character moments there. So then that brings us to the final thread throughout this season, which was the Belter and Drummer and Ashford, the two Belter main characters in this thread. Drummer is the governor, the commander of the Behemoth, which is this former Mormon generation ship that now is a station in the ring space. And the Belters they now have a seat at the table with Mars and Earth because they control ring space. They control access to the new worlds. Essentially, it's as if some tiny nation set up an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and said to Europe, by the way, if you want to go to the new world, you have to get through us to get there. So it's interesting, and so Drummer is in command of Behemoth. Ashford is OPA peacekeeper, tracking down renegades. He's trying to keep the peace by stopping they used to be terrorists, all of the OPA, but now some of them are respectable and some of them still are terrorists. Interesting analogs to current day events. I really liked Ashford. I really liked his character. Very interesting character. He was very gray. It's a little good, little bad. Very good.
Right. And like you said, the change in his role as you got to the end of that season 4 was interesting to me.
Yeah.
Before he was sort of the terrorist and now he's the peacekeeper. And it was interesting to see that change.
Right.
To me. Especially how he ends up.
Yeah. And you see analogs to that sort of thing in our own world, where places where people have fought violent revolution are now in control, or at least are now respectable. They suddenly have to stop being the criminal and be the cop, and sometimes against their own people, like whether it's Afghanistan or Lebanon or in South America, various countries. It's an interesting aspect of that part kind of revolution, that revolutionary action. So
I think he and Drummer were my favorite part of this season. Just that the weird situation they had to deal with of kind of appeasing both Earth and Mars, but also their fellow Belter people. And Ashford's like such a kind of a cool, it's almost like a pirate character. Yeah. And particularly the very end of the season where they board that ship, and you don't see him in action like that too much this season. You're like, oh yeah, this is what he did. Like he's right. Kind of this pirate guy, and but he really comes across as just like a thoughtful leader and really cares about his people. And yeah, he kind of came into his own in a good way. I really enjoyed his arc.
One of the important figures in this plot line was the character Marco Inaros. He's an OPA pirate. He's a former lover of Naomi, who's Holden's girlfriend, and he's the father. We find out he's the father of her son, and she has strong negative feelings about Inaros. Naomi has strong negative feelings because she felt like he was dragging her into really bad stuff. They went from fighting for their people to doing really, really evil things, and that's when she left. They capture Inaros at one point. Oh, I thought that was just fascinating. And the Belters, they're going to space him. They're going to throw him out an airlock. But he appeals to them to acquit him of his crime of capturing that UN colony ship and massacring its passengers. And they decide to let him go after he makes certain promises. And it's Drummer who votes to acquit. And Ashford, who voted to space him, is set on his heels. And Drummer says, if we voted to throw him out of the airlock, it would have divided the OPA and the Belters. So it was more important to stay united than to divide. That ends up being a bad decision, I think. Do you agree? Does that clearly?
I think so. Just that he spoke some true things, like the Earth and Mars did turn on them. They broke the truce, and that they were sort of asserting control. And they have been oppressing the Belt, but I think just the politicking that she has to do in that moment of, yeah, we need to stay strong, or I mean, like you saw the results of it, just that
right.
That's what happens, and I think eventually that Ashford respects her choice in the end, even if he didn't in the moment, shows really the kind of the honesty of their relationship.
Yeah. Of all, I mean, Holden is pretty honest with his people, but I got to say the honesty in their situation between Ashford and Drummer, and they're very real to each other. They don't. There's not a lot of deception that goes on, and I think this comes back to haunt Drummer because she eventually will resign her position after she finds out that the leader of the OPA, Fred Johnson, cooperated with Earth against Inaros. He revealed Inaros's location later on, which ends up getting a lot of Belters killed. And she's like, that's just too far. You can't turn against your own people. And that, again, violates her code, her moral code. And she steps down based on that, which is, it's an admirable moral position for her to take. In fact, when she resigns, that propels Ashford to say, I'm going to hunt down Inaros. He's a problem. He's dividing the Belters. He's bad for us. He thinks he's good for us, but he's bad for us. And so, like you said, there's that scene where he finds him, he boards the ship, Ashford gets the drop on him, but then Naomi's son, Philip, shows up and ambushes him, and Ashford ends up getting spaced by them, which is, I thought, I was really sad about it. I really like the character. So in one sense, I'm glad the producers are willing to sacrifice good characters to propel the story forward. That they're not quite Game of Thrones sacrificing characters, but we occasionally sacrifice a good character to propel the story forward. And I liked Ashford's arc, especially that humanizing at the end. That what was he remembering as was this his grandson or granddaughter? I think it was.
Seemed like it, yes. Singing kind of like a Belter sort of song to them. Yeah,
a lullaby that he was singing. Yeah, really, I really liked Ashford. And then the season ends with this reveal of what Inaros' plan was all along, is launching these asteroids that are cloaked with Martian stealth technology that they'd been stealing with the help of Bobby and the others, launching these asteroids at Earth. That was their plan. So what's going to happen next season? Well, Father, you and I know, probably based on the books, but who knows if they decide to go in another direction with the TV show. But that's quite a place to leave the season. And they named the final episodes Cibola Burn, which is the name of the book that the season is based on. And I had to look it up. A Cibola is a Spanish name. I might be saying it might be Cibola. I don't know if I've got it right.
I would have said Cibola.
Cibola, probably. Yes, okay. I'm saying it like an Anglo. But Cibola Burn. So Cibola is a Spanish transliteration of a native name for a pueblo, the Native American ruins out in the Southwest. It was also one of the 7 cities of gold that Coronado was looking for when he found the pueblos. So it's interesting. I'm kind of curious what you think they were intending by that title, the Cibola, that Cibola Burns. Something. So a city of gold is burning of some sort.
I honestly didn't know what that meant when I read the book. They always have very, very interesting kind of like word games with all their titles with some sort of mythological word being there. But yeah, I guess you could look at it sort of in reference to like the frontier of Illis and kind of just the
it burns.
They go through horrible things and to try to build that place. But then heading towards the future, what's coming towards Earth is, I think, one of the darkest moments in any of these books is this next one.
Right. Yeah. Depending on what happens in the series, but if they're sending these cloaked asteroids at Earth, that's a bad thing. Does Earth burn? Is it Ilis burning? Is it Mars that is going to burn? There's some question there. So it's interesting that it gives you pause to think about. So any final thoughts on this season, guys? What your overall assessment of this? Did it live up to the promise of saving it from cancellation? Was it better than the other seasons? What do you think?
I didn't see much of a degradation at all. I mean, I thought it was just fine the way they did it, the way they continued it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it certainly fits with the first 3 seasons, and now I'm excited to know there's going to be a 5th season, so I can't wait.
Yes, same here.
I'm going to have to go read the book now.
You got to go read the book. Yeah, the books are so good. How about you, Father?
This was my least favorite book. Because I guess I like them in the Rocinante doing space stuff. I guess I enjoy that more. And I kind of was, I was like, I don't want to read about these slugs anymore. That felt like way a bigger part of the story in the book. But I felt like it had a slow start, but it built and built and built. And I watched a bunch of it today because there's not that much going on right now, but was really, really into it. And I think especially one thing that struck me is that the whole protomolecule situation gets resolved in the second to last episode.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last episode is kind of like all sort of set up towards what's coming next. And I thought that was a really interesting way of ending the season. It wasn't a cliffhanger in the same way that some of the other ones were.
It's funny you mentioned the book, because I was not a huge fan of this particular book either, partly for the same reasons, and partly because I felt like all this stuff having to do with Marcos Inaros was kind of confusing what was actually going on there. Whereas seeing it on screen and being condensed, because they had to condense it all to fit into a season, I think made it a lot more understandable. I suppose if I went back and reread the book, it would be more understandable given what I know now. But I almost preferred the TV season over the book in this case too. As far as the quality of the show, the quality of the special effects is top notch. I think that the production values are off the chart. And I really enjoyed it. I agree. I prefer the Rocinante in space doing spacey things. I'm curious to see where things go from here. There again, based on the books, there are big things coming, and there's several seasons worth of interesting content ahead. And I'm really curious. I'm curious about, again, more of the casting, because I'm curious what some of these roles are going to be played by. So, all right, great. I think that about does it for us. We should probably wrap things up there. And we'll be back for talk about season 5. It won't be 2 years. We'll hopefully, depends on how long it takes before they can start making TV shows again after all this that we're dealing with. But that's a whole nother topic. But before we go, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Movies and TV shows, including this time Susan S., Jonathan L., Teresa S., Father Paul, and Sydney O. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What do you think of The Expanse Season 4? Did you like it? But did you read the books, and how did it compare? Let us know by commenting on the show, by posting at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page, or you can send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Until next time, Father Michael Gossett, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of The Expanse Season 4.
It was great to talk about it. Thank you.
And Steve Nelson, thank you as well.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV shows on StarQuest.